So good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming in on a Sunday evening. And sorry for the slight delay. The Secretary General has a statement to make, and we'll then take a few questions. Secretary General, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your taking time on Sunday evening. I have some important announcement to make at this time. As you know, tomorrow I will depart for Montreux for Geneva Conference on Syria. The conference is our long-awaited chance to end the violence and begin putting the country back together. I welcome the decision by the National Coalition of Syrian Revolution and Armed Forces to participate. I look forward to seeing an inclusive opposition delegation. Over the past 48 hours, I have had a series of intensive meetings and telephone conversations with many global leaders and others who are part of the diplomacy aimed at helping Syria to regain the path of peace. I have been striving to generate momentum and to create the best possible atmosphere for the success of this crucially important undertaking. Further to these discussions, I have decided to issue some additional invitations to the one-day gathering in Montreux. They are Australia, Bahrain, Belgium, Greece, the Holy See, Luxembourg, Mexico, the Netherlands, the Republic of Korea, and Iran. I believe the expanded international presence on that day will be an important and useful show of solidarity in advance of the hard work that the Syrian government and opposition delegations will begin 2 days later in Geneva. As I have said repeatedly, I believe strongly that Iran needs to be part of the solution to the Syrian crisis. I have spoken at length in recent days with Iran's Foreign Minister, Mr. Javad Zarif. He has assured me that, like all the other countries invited to the opening day discussions in Montreux, Iran understands that the basis of the talks is the full implementation of the 30 June 2012 Geneva Communique, including the action plan. Foreign Minister Zarif and I agree that the goal of the negotiations is to establish, by mutual consent, a transitional governing body with the full executive powers. It was on that basis that Foreign Minister Zarif pledged that Iran would play a positive and constructive role in Montreux. Therefore, as convener and host of the conference, I have decided to issue an invitation to Iran to participate. After nearly 3 years of devastation and after many months of discussions about the conference, it is now time for the Syrian parties, the region, and international community to unite behind a political solution based on the Geneva Communique. I call on all those who come to Montreux to act in good faith. Let me be clear. Montreux is not a venue for negotiations. The Syrian parties themselves will begin that process in Geneva on 24 January. In Montreux, we are gathering countries and organizations to show their solidarity with this process and, of course, with the Syrian people who have suffered so much. I especially appeal to the Syrian parties themselves to keep one goal in mind: the end of the suffering of the Syrian people and the beginning of a transition to a new Syria. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Secretary General. We have time for a couple of questions. Rahida.
Yes, Mr. Secretary General, I'm Raghida Valhaya, as you know, but I'm here to welcome you on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association. Thank you for sharing this important news with us, and we'd like to welcome the special guest, your daughter, I take it. Thank you for bringing her on this important day. Sir, what, from your point of view, has led Iran to change its course and its mind and agree to the terms that you have stated, Geneva 1 being implemented at Geneva 2? And secondly, where does this put the position of the government of Syria, who wrote you a letter saying they disagree with the terms of reference? And thirdly, we heard that the Syrians have proposed, backed by the Russians, that there will be elections. They proposed to hold early elections 3 months from now with limited international supervision, basically the BRICS. Do you welcome this, or do you, of course with President Assad running, do you welcome this or do you dismiss this idea? Thank you.
The issue of Iran's participation in Geneva Conference has been one of the key issues since 2012, when first Syria Geneva Conference was held. At that time, after a long and very careful consideration, we decided not to invite. At that time, Mr. Kofi Annan, the former Secretary General, was the convener. At that time, Iran was not invited after very careful consideration and after consultations with the many countries, together with Saudi Arabia. You may remember very well. When we proposed to have Geneva II conference, again this issue has been discussed at length by the initiating countries, together with Lakhdar Brahimi and many countries. As I said in my opening statement, after long and very careful, extensive discussions with the parties concerned, and Iran needs to participate as one of the important neighboring countries. And I have been speaking with him extensively many times, including the last one yesterday, that Iran understands that the basis of this conference is the Geneva Communique 1. And the main goal of this Geneva Conference too should be to establish a transitional governing body with the full executive powers upon mutual consent. He assured me again and again that Iran, if they are invited, then they will play a very positive, constructive role. For the second question about the letter of Syrian government, you should know that, first of all, it is regrettable that the letter was leaked. Then the main purpose of our conference is to establish a transitional governing body with the full executive powers. On third questions, I'm not in a position to comment, because all this kind of political process should be negotiated in Geneva, including elections. Yeah.
Okay, I think you were coming next to Notimex.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, Secretary General, Mexican News Agency. Can you shed some light on why you decided to invite Mexico to these negotiations? Is it as a representative of the Latin American region in general? Thank you so much.
I have decided to invite 10 additional countries, in addition to 30 countries, which have been already invited. I'm not going to deal with countries one by one, why these countries have been invited. Mexico is a very important regional countries, and Mexico is also one of the global players who can play a very important positive role. Those countries who are now invited additionally also can work as a source of pool through which we can send a strong political solidarity, and they can play a very important role. Mexico can play an important role when there is an agreement. as a result of Geneva II conference negotiation, very important, they can play a very politically important role. They can provide the necessary resources, and they can be a very good partner in this process.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Kazuhiko Kusano from Japan's newspaper Mainichi Shimbun. I have two questions. The government of Saudi Arabia said that they are going to participate in the conference. And one more question is, when the participation of Iran, the United States, when you talk with the counterpart of the United States, did they show some objection when you say that you are going to issue the invitation to the Iranian government? Thank you.
I'm not going to discuss anything, this issue with the individual countries' positions and reactions. We will have to see. But it's true that I have spoken with the Saudi foreign minister on this matter recently. And I sincerely hope that I first of all welcome the Saudi government's acceptance of my invitation. And he told me that he would be coming himself. And I also hope that the Saudi, as a very important regional player, can play a very constructive and positive contribution to the success of this Geneva Conference. Yeah.
Okay, NHK, and then Joseph.
Thank you. Go Kamushita from NHK. So you said that you had a very intensified talk with the foreign minister, Zarif. So can we say, did he say clearly that Iran has changed its position to accept totally the Geneva I document?
As I understand, Iran, they said that they are committed to play a very constructive and important positive role. And they said that they welcome this Geneva communique. So based on my conversations on several times with Iranian delegations, then I'm convinced that they in support of this Geneva communique, and they will play a very important positive constructive role. And I understand that they may issue also a statement. Yeah.
Okay, Joseph, and then the last question.
Yeah. Joseph Klein, Canada Free Press. You mentioned that the actual substantive negotiations are going to begin between the Syrian government representatives and the opposition on January 24th in Geneva. What are the modalities in terms of any participation or facilitation by any of the nations that you have invited? I know you indicated they're there for the solidarity in Montreux, but to what extent are any or all of them going to play any role in helping facilitate the negotiations along with the UN itself? And along with that, there have been reports about some having scaled back expectations in terms of the outcome of the negotiations, in the regard that perhaps a more realistic expectation might be humanitarian corridors being opened up and some localized ceasefires. If that is the eventual outcome, would that be something that you would consider at least some degree of success? Thank you.
First of all, about the modalities, we, from the beginning, when US and Russia initiated this one, and in the course of our consultations, we thought that first we divide into two parts, because we believe from the beginning that the negotiations should be led by and owned by Syrians. So this second part is the most important, crucially important one. But since they have been fighting during the last 3 years, it's very important that the international community should urge them to act and negotiate in good faith for their own future. And a lot of countries have been involved in this Syrian crisis. First of all, 70, 80 countries have been providing humanitarian assistance, as was shown in Kuwait last week. And many countries have been providing their logistical and political support for destruction of chemical weapons. And many countries have been expressing their concerns. Almost all the countries in the world, they have been expressing their concern that this violence must stop for humanity and for the future, better future of Syrians. We cannot let this situation go on like this way. That is why we believe that the political process is important. And these 40 countries who are going to participate in Montreux Conference will play a source of support and encouragement and solidarity, and in the course of implementing any agreement which will be made as an outcome, result of this meeting, they can also play a very important role. So now, on your second part is that the chemical weapons destruction and humanitarian assistance, they can always work as a mutually reinforcing process. But among all this, first of all, we have to have a political solution. But in the absence of political solution, many people have been killed, well over 100,000 people, and millions and millions of people have been refugees and internally displaced. So we have to continue at the same time. But since we are going to begin this political process, I sincerely hope that all the parties, particularly Syrian parties, should act in good faith with a sense of seriousness and a sense of time. Time is of essence.
Okay, this is the last question. Keep it brief, please. Thank you.
I have two quick questions. One of them is there have been reports that 40 of the Syria National Coalition delegates walked out on the vote on whether or not to attend Geneva II. Do you think that boycott will have a significant impact on inclusive delegations in reaching a political solution? And the second question is, would you be able to give us any updates on the composition of the delegates and whether or not there's a significant presence of women? Do you feel positive that women will be well represented?
We have been stating consistently that the delegation list should include women, and women's voices should be properly reflected in the course of this negotiation. That's very important. And as I said in my statement, I highly commend and welcome their decision yesterday, which was made in Istanbul. And I sincerely hope that they will participate as they have committed and make their voices heard to the world. And sit down together with the Syrian government delegation in earnest, in sincerity, and with a sense of mission for their own people. So after all, this Syria is their own country, and they should be responsible for the future, better future for Syrian people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.